Back in the preseason, we knew this was going to be a big game, but maybe not this big. Number 7 Tennessee at 8-1 travels to Athens to take on number 12 Georgia at 7-2. Shocking not to see Georgia in the top 10. Shocking to see them as the first team out in the new set of the college football playoff rankings, which is why this game is so massive. It has massive SEC title implications, massive college football playoff implications. A Tennessee win practically locks them up in the SEC title and the college football playoff, while a loss for Georgia practically eliminates them from playoff contention. But a win for Georgia would create chaos in the SEC and, of course, chaos in the playoff race as well. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, guys. Ready to break down this top 12 matchup in the SEC on Saturday night. It does not get better than this. As always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home of our exclusive expert picks. We've got a lot of packages there for you guys. We've been beating out over 80% of the national handicappers, have done so each of the last 6 years. We're also now offering you our new holiday special that will give you every single bowl game pick, the final 4 weeks of the NFL regular season, and every NFL playoff pick. And we have hit over 64% of our college football bowl game picks all time. We have never had a college football postseason where we have hit less than 60% of our bets. So we are dominant in the postseason. We will be again this year. Go sign up for that. The link for it down in the description below over on thegridironexpert.com. Tennessee, Georgia. Let's just get into it. Let's start on offense. We'll start with the Volunteers, who are the higher-ranked team. They are 8-1. The lone loss by 5 points on the road at Arkansas. The million-dollar question for Tennessee in this game is, will Nico Iamaleava play? At the time of this video, so many rumors surrounding it. Some are saying it's a lock that he's not playing. Some are saying it's still up in the air. I think most signs are pointing to him not playing in this game. Got injured in their win last week against Mississippi State. Has thrown for over 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions on the year. If he plays, great. Tennessee's odds improve. If he doesn't, they turn to their senior quarterback, freshman Nico. He's a freshman, but they turn to senior Gaston Moore, who has 25 pass attempts this year. That's it. 8 of those coming last week in replacement for Nico Iamaleava against Mississippi State. So the quarterback play is interesting. Does Nico, if he plays, is he fully healthy? Is he 100%? Does he do well on the road? He hasn't done well on the road this season against Oklahoma and Arkansas. Could he do it now in Athens? If he doesn't play, how does Gaston Moore, who's hardly played at all, handle this type of environment? The X factor, though, is the running game. Tennessee, we know, wants to run the football. They have one of the best running backs in the country in Dylan Sampson, who's rushed for over 1,100 yards and 20 touchdowns. Tennessee averaging over 235 rushing yards per game. They've got to get him going, and they've got to find the success on the ground if they want to have a chance to beat Georgia. Because if they become one-dimensional, especially if it's a one-dimensional passing offense only, they're not going to win this game. They have to succeed on the ground. When you look at Georgia offensively, I'm going to say it. It's not good. It's not good. Georgia has not been overly impressive offensively all year long. I mean, just take a look at it. Yes, they lit up Alabama in the second half. Yes, they dropped a lot of points on Texas only because the defense did their job and put the offense in position where they could score easily. And a lot of drives for Georgia starting in Texas territory there. But they haven't looked that impressive. And Carson Beck continues to struggle in the turnover category. 9 interceptions for Beck in his last 4 games. And he had just 186 passing yards last week against Ole Miss. A game where, he was smiling on the bench as they were getting their butts whooped. He had another player cheering with people when it was over. And yes, I know it was his friend. Regardless, Georgia seemingly having a lot of distractions, not just on the field, but off the field. And maybe a bit of a culture issue happening down in Athens right now. The question is, can Kirby Smart turn it around? The question is, can Carson Beck turn his play around in this game? Because, look, there's talent there. This is Georgia we're talking about. They've got tons of talent. They've got 9 players that have at least 100 reception yards on the year. They're still averaging over 286 passing yards per game, but the running game has been non-existent. That's kind of been a shock, and maybe why the Georgia offense hasn't been as good as we thought it would be, because there's no balance. The Bulldogs rank 104th nationally when running the football, averaging just 124 rushing yards per game. It's practically non-existent. The offensive line has been up and down this year. Just last week against Ole Miss, gave up 5 sacks to the Rebels. So Georgia offensively has to be better across the board. They've got to be better in protection. They've got to be better in not turning the ball over, Carson Beck. They've got to find a way to get the ground game going. They've got to find a way to have some aggression and some energy and get out to a fast start, which we haven't seen as often as we would have liked throughout the year. So all that being said, now the question is, can Tennessee's defense handle that? Georgia has been struggling. Tennessee's licking their chops. They're looking, look, we just saw what Ole Miss did. Granted, it was in Oxford, not in Athens. But we just saw what Ole Miss did. We believe we can do the same thing because, this is the 5th overall defense in the country. The Volunteers are giving up just 271 yards per game, only 171 through the air, only 100 on the ground. And this defensive line, up and down throughout the year, does have 22 sacks on the season. James Pierce has 5.5 of those 22 sacks, and he is licking his chops saying, I can have the same success like, a guy like Jared Ivey had last week for Ole Miss. Ivey was dominant in that game for Ole Miss last week. Pierce is thinking the same thing, and it's a bit of a concern for that Georgia offensive line. Tennessee's got the defense. There's no doubt about it. But as, bad, if you want to say the word bad, as inconsistent, as much as he has been struggling, Carson Beck, he is arguably the best quarterback, or one of the 2 best quarterbacks that Tennessee has faced this year. The only other top quarterback they have faced was Jalen Milroe in Alabama. And in that game, Milroe had 239 passing yards. Yes, Alabama lost the game, but if you go back and watch, Alabama probably shouldn't have lost that game. If they had just learned how to take care of the football and hadn't shot themselves in the foot, the Crimson Tide win this game, and the dynamic of what's happening in Athens on Saturday is drastically different. Jalen Milroe had a solid game all in all. Again, had some turnovers in that game. Carson Beck is, some would say better, some would say maybe on par with Milroe if you want to go that route, but he is one of the best quarterbacks Tennessee's defense has seen. There is no denying that. Can they contain him? Can they stop this passing attack that's averaging almost 300 passing yards per game? Last year in Knoxville, Carson Beck went 24 for 30 for 298 yards and 3 touchdowns. Last year is different from this year. I understand that. He had more weapons last year than he had this year. But regardless, he torched Tennessee secondary just last season. If Tennessee hasn't learned from their mistakes and hasn't fixed that, it will happen again despite the turnover issues he's been dealing with. Georgia, on the other hand, they're pretty good defensively, right? I mean, Kirby Smart, here's the thing. Kirby Smart is still the best coach in the country. I know this hasn't been the best year for Georgia. 2 losses before the end of the year is very shocking. But this is still a very good, well-coached team if they can fix those culture issues, as I said. They are the 13th ranked team defensively, allowing just 306 yards per game. They only allow 195.6 passing yards per game, only 111 rushing yards per game. And that is the key number for me right there. Obviously, how they can contain against the run. Because here's the thing. Regardless of who plays quarterback, like we just mentioned, the quarterback's going to struggle. You're going to play between the hedges in Athens at night with a game of this magnitude. The quarterback's going to struggle. Nico Iamaleava was held to under 200 passing yards in the 2 other toughest road games he's had this year, which were at Oklahoma and at Arkansas. Again, held to under 200 yards in each of those games. So if he goes, I don't like his confidence and his ability to win this type of environment. If he doesn't go, you're putting a guy in there that's only had 25 attempts this season and has had very limited playing time throughout his career. So the quarterback area for Tennessee is a concern, and Georgia is licking their chops at that. Meaning if Kirby Smart and this defense can sell out on the run and stop Dylan Sampson and force them to have to win the game through the air, Georgia's going to be looking really, really good. They need to find a way to create mistakes, create turnovers, force Tennessee into mistakes just like they did against Texas. That game was lopsided. It was a double-digit victory for Georgia. It was a one-possession game in the second half after the very controversial pass interference call. But regardless, it was relatively close. The reason Georgia got so many points, the reason they were there was because their defense created those opportunities. The defense created those opportunities. They've got to find a way to do it again now against Tennessee. So there you go, guys. I mean, we're talking about a massive game here where a Georgia team that for many was the preseason pick to go win the Natty could have 3 losses and miss out on the playoff entirely. And more than likely, if they lose this game, they would miss out on the playoff entirely. They might flirt, you make the argument, but right now, they're the first team out. They're not even in the playoff field if the season ended today. This is a must-win for the Bulldogs. Tennessee could lose this game and still have an opportunity, a chance to get in. Maybe. But obviously a win for the Volunteers practically locks it up. They're 9-1. Their final 2 games are what? Against UTEP and Vandy. Pretty much almost guarantees them a spot in the SEC championship. And with that, at 11-1, win or lose, they're going to the playoffs. So this is a huge, huge game for both of these programs. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. Like I just mentioned, Kirby Smart is still the best coach in college football right now. And you've got a team that is hungry, that is hopefully, if he can right the ship, angry after what we just witnessed in a 28-10 loss against Ole Miss. They're at home at night with their backs against the wall. The season is determined right here for Georgia. You lose, your season's done. You win, you keep it alive. You have to leave everything out on the field on Saturday, and I believe they will do just that. Georgia takes care of business here. The defense makes Tennessee pay for their lack of quarterback play regardless of who is under center. Georgia finds a way to shut down the run. I think the Bulldogs win this game by, I would say, at least 10 points. Georgia gets the win, keeps their playoff hopes alive at least for another week. Tennessee's are not completely done, but they will have to sweat it out a little bit over the remainder of the season. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Of course, check out everything down in the description below. Again, that includes our expert picks over on thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best picks in the country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years. And we now are offering our holiday special to let you take advantage of our bowl picks, which are always some of the best in the country every single year. So go check it out. The link for that down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.